Yo guys, before I begin the deck profile, I just want to give a quick shout out to my friends at Locals. They run a channel called TeamVLR. They have deck profiles, combo videos, and live duels. Also, they just recently got sponsored by my Locals 4-1 games. So, if you're interested to get 10% off your singles, make sure you check them out. I'll leave the link in the description below. Also, if you're a fan of generators, or you want to see how the deck progresses as time goes on, or you're just interested in rogue decks in general, make sure you check out my series Road to Glory. It's a series where I take a rogue deck and I try to build it from the ground up and take it to an event like a regionals, a YCS, or maybe even a Pro Play Tour event and try to top and get my invite. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, I'm going to start off with the main deck. So the reason that this deck became playable is because of Ignition Assault. The new boss monster came out, Utgard, I like to call him. He's the card that you want to summon off your boss stage probably almost every single turn, minus situational situations. Perhaps if you're playing against Subterra and you really want to pop the Guru, because from there they usually just have to pass. So what he does is he tributes 2 monsters, so you're tributing your tokens. You target 1 card in the field, doesn't matter if it's face down, face up, spell, monster, trap, doesn't matter. Target it, banish it. Really, really good. Next we're playing 2 Hello Boss of Doom. This one is the one that you tribute to special summon from the graveyard. So she's really good because she can bring back your Mardell. She can, well, and in that case, Mardell searches your stage or searches any other generated card that you need. Perhaps you have Quest in hand and you want to generate a monster so you can put it to the bottom of your deck with Quest and then get 2 generator spell traps. So she's really good. The reason you want to play 2 of her as well is just in case you draw into one and you need her to revive one of your generator monsters. Because if you summon her and you have a generator in your graveyard and your opponent just passes turn, you can tribute one of the tokens, get back a generator, and then on your next turn you can go into a rank 9 player. Next we're playing 2 Nidhogg. This one I'm considering cutting down to maybe 1, but this guy is the one that negates special summons. The thing that's important to note is he only negates inherent summons, so he wouldn't be able to negate a monster that's special summoned by card effect. For example, Gizmak, Orochi, the one that banishes 8 to special summon, yeah, you can't negate that. But something like Pankratops, however, you can negate. Next, we're playing 1 copy of Mardell. This one's debatable. Some people play 1, some people play 2, some people play 3. The reason I play 1 is because I feel like she does nothing by herself. The main way you summon her is through Lone Fire Blossom typically, and then you don't really want to open her. Maybe if you have Monstrosity and her, but that's just like if you literally have nothing else to do. It's really suboptimal in that sense. Next, we're playing 1 Dovulgus. This one you kind of have to play just because there are hands where you open a bunch of generator monsters and they're just sitting there doing nothing. Maybe you don't have Quest, maybe you don't have your level 9 Trade-In and Kujikiri Curse. But yeah, basically what he does is he tributes any number of tokens and you get the same number of either machine or generator monsters from your hand to your field. So this guy is really good. So remember, you're not restricted to just summoning 1 from your hand. You can summon all 4 if you have 4 in your hand. Next we're playing Frody. Frody's a weird one because you don't really want to use his effect. His effect sounds really good. It tributes any number of generator monsters on the field, and then you can target up to that same amount of monsters that your opponent has, and you can destroy them. However, there is a drawback. Your opponent can also draw cards equal to the amount of monsters that you destroyed on their field. The only bonus is if your opponent doesn't read. So if your opponent doesn't read, the draw is not mandatory. The draw is optional. So if your opponent decides to not read and be a complete dingus, well then, yeah, this card is phenomenal. But however, like I mentioned earlier, there are situations where if your opponent is playing Subterra and they're setting their Guru, you're going to want to pop the Guru before they can flip the Guru with either their field spell or, well, if they have Final Battle set, then it's too late at that point. But if you're starting off and you know you're playing against Guru, this is probably the best guy to start with. We're playing 1 copy of Italy just because we're playing Monstrosity. Italy's second effect never comes up. Her second effect is when she's special summoned and your opponent controls more link monsters than you, you can send all link monsters they control to the graveyard. But we are playing her for her first effect. Her first effect being that level 9 monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. So Monstrosity special summons 2 level 9s from your deck to your field, however, they are destroyed during the end phase, but Italy is able to protect them. So not only do you get an extra interruption on your opponent's turn, if all 3 of your monsters or even 2 of them survive to your next turn, you get a free VFD or whatever rank 9 you need to go into that turn. We're playing 1 copy of the Thunder Kaiju. This is something we want to test out this past weekend. I wouldn't say it performed too well. Not sure if I'm going to keep it in, but it is a level 9. It is a target for Monstrosity, and it also is a target for your level 9 trade-in. We played 1 copy of Lone Fire Blossom. We're not 100% sure on the ratios just yet. However, I am considering bumping this card up to 2 or 3, which is actually what I'm probably going to do going forward. I think this card is a phenomenal play starter. It gets you to your field spell, and if you open it alongside your Monstrosity, you get a free VFD. We decided to play 2 copies of Ash Blossom. We're not too hand trap heavy, we're more control heavy with this deck. However, if I'm not playing Ash Blossom in deck and I see my opponent activate Extravagance, I always regret not playing Ash Blossom. Even if I don't see this card in my opening hand, just knowing that it's in my deck, it lets me feel a little bit at ease. Next, we're playing the only reason we play this deck. 3 copies of Generator Boss Stage. This is the field spell of the deck. This is the card that summons a boss monster every single turn to your field alongside as many tokens as possible. This card is amazing, and your deck is basically just to turbo out this card and go off from there. For our other Generator spell cards, we're playing 2 Generator Boss Quest. This one allows you to kind of unbrick your hand. If you have a Generator boss monster in your hand, you get to reveal it, and the reveal is not mandatory, so you don't have to show your opponent what card is in your hand. Your reveal is not your cost or your activation requirement. Your reveal is only at resolution, so if your opponent asks for the reveal and you reveal the card is resolving at that point. So you reveal one, you search 2 spell or traps with different names, you put the Generator boss monster at the bottom of your deck, and yeah, there you go, your hand is unbricked. We're playing 3 copies of Kujikiri Curse. This is your level 9 trade in the deck. It really helps to unbrick your hands, dig deeper into your deck, searching for maybe the floodgates or whatever starter card that you need to get your plays going, or maybe to lock out your opponent. We're playing 3 copies of World Legacy Monstrosity. This card is really good. Its first effect comes up situationally. Its first effect is you can special summon 1 level 9 monster from your hand to your field, which if you have Mardell in combination with this is really good because that's instant field spell access. However, you primarily want to use it for its second effect, where hopefully your boss monster survives your opponent's turn, and then you activate Monstrosity, bring out 2 level 9 monsters, could be whatever you want. I'm actually considering playing the new Gizmak, because if you bring out the Gizmak, their effects are not negated, so you can maybe take a monster from your opponent's extra monster zone. Perhaps they have a Link Karibo or something that's really pestering or annoying for you. And you can also bring out Mardell with this if you haven't already used her. So with this card, not only are you enabling your VFD play, there's a chance that you can clear something from your opponent's extra monster zone, and there's also a chance you can go plus with Mardell. Next, we're playing 3 copies of Called by the Grave. Your field spell needs to resolve. Your access to your field spell needs to resolve, so you need to play 3 of this. Playing 2 Pot of Duality, just because our only normal summon in deck is Lone Fire Blossom. Apart from that, you're not going to be special summoning on your turn unless you're going into a VFD play. In that case, you can probably just hold this card and save it to next turn. And the last spell we're playing is 1 Terraforming, obviously because you want to see your field spell. As for our traps, we're playing 3 Generator Boss Fight. This card is probably the only card that you want to play that gives your opponent advantage. You don't want to play stuff like Dark World Dealings or Drag Down to the Grave, just because those cards help your opponent a tremendous amount. Not only does your opponent draw a card at that point, they also get to discard to the graveyard, and with stuff like Spiral, stuff like Orcus, stuff like Salamangreat, just decks that want to get their stuff in the graveyard, you don't really want to be playing those cards. However, this card is like a metaverse for your deck. Not only does it activate a field spell from your deck or graveyard, which is really important to note, it also lets your opponent draw 1 card, and since your field spell is already on the field at that point, you get to special summon a Generator Boss. And the important thing to note is, Your generator boss stage, your field spell, its first effect is not a hard once per turn. So you can trigger it the first time on your opponent's draw phase, and if you want another boss monster at the end of your turn or maybe halfway through your turn to interrupt your opponent, you can activate Generator Boss Fight. We're playing one Generator Boss Room. It's kind of like a pseudo Call by the Grave. Again, I said you don't want to be playing cards that help your opponent draw. However, if your opponent decides to respond to the activation of your generator cards or their effects, you can chain Generator Boss Room, discard one card, and the effect of that card becomes both players draw one card. An interesting interaction to note is if your opponent flips a continuous trap, like this one, and you chain Boss Room in response to it, the continuous trap does not stay on the field and it goes to the graveyard. We're playing some gimmicky one-offs just because we want to try some things out. We're playing one Snowman effect. What this card does is it combines the total attack of all your monsters on the field to whatever monster you target. So if you have one boss monster and 4 tokens and your opponent declares attack on the token, which does happen quite frequently, you activate Snowman effect, and that's almost just about lethal. We're playing one copy of World Legacy Awakens. We're not entirely too sure if we're going to be playing this card going forward. I have thought about playing Wonder Exceeds because that did come up this past weekend where I wish I had one instead of the other. But this card, the theory behind it is you have 4 tokens on your field. You can activate this, make an IP Masquerena, and use that IP Masquerena to go into either a Phoenix or a Nightmare Unicorn with one of your other tokens. So in that theory, you have one generator boss, and then you have another possible interruption with IP Masquerena. In theory, it's really good. It didn't really come up this weekend. Maybe I'm not playing enough copies of this card, or maybe, in theory, it's not that good. We decided to play 3 copies of Summon Limit. Now, this one's kind of weird, but what you have to remember is your token summons, when it summons 4 tokens from your field spell, those are simultaneous summons, so they only count as one summon. That's right. So you still get your boss monster and you still get your 4 tokens. And the fact that you're playing on your opponent's turn, this card doesn't really interrupt you. You can still make VFD and whatever you want on your play. Also, Monstrosity. Those 2 monsters that are summoned, simultaneous. And for the last card, the best card of the format, in my opinion, Evenly Matched. We're playing 3 copies of this in the main deck just because in case our opponent does go first and they're playing something like Spiral, or maybe their opening is just absolutely insane, we just want to have a possibility and a chance to play the game. So we are main decking 3 Evenly Matched. Next, we're going to go into our extra deck. We are playing 2 True King of All Calamities. This is the most important card in your extra deck, bar none. This is the card that will absolutely blow out your opponent and probably help you win 90% of your games. If you are winning with generators, you are probably winning because of Calamities. Next, we decided to play 2 Phantom Fortress, how do I say this? Anterblathner or something. I don't know. Whether that was a Russian accent or not, who knows. Anyways, this card is situational, but it has non-targeting removal that banishes your opponent's card, which is really good. You can also banish from the hand, which can come up. Although it is random, if you know your opponent has something like Altergeist Conqueror in their hand, you can take the gamble. Hopefully they only have 1 or 2 cards in their hand, and that way you can swing for lethal. Infinite Track Earth Slicer. This card actually comes up more frequently than you think. This card, you can attach whatever number of materials that it has, 1 or 2, maybe both, right? Well, yeah, I guess that's what 1 or 2 means. But yeah, you get to target that same number of cards on the field and you get to pop them. So before I used to come up against True Draco, now the deck partially dead, still kind of around. But yeah, it's really good to clear cards off the board. We're playing 1 new card from Ignition Assault, 9 Lives Cat. This card I think is really good if you somehow make it into the mid game, because what this card can do is it's a big body. First off, 3300 defense, but it can either revive a level 9 monster from your graveyard, or it can special summon any monster, not just the level 9, any monster from your opponent's graveyard. So if it's a grindy game, like mid game, and they have something like a Pancratops in their graveyard, you can bring back the Pancratops, and then you have some sort of, you have a big body and you have some sort of interruption. We're playing one, sorry, we're gonna butcher this guy's name again too. Jormungandr, Generator Boss of Eternity. So, this guy honestly never really comes up. I can't really think of a good scenario where you want to play him. He is a generator boss name. I was just playing him just in case he ever came up, but so far you could consider just completely cutting this card. It is not mandatory or necessary for the deck whatsoever. We're playing one copy of Gravity Controller, another new card that came out in Ignition Assault. This card, oddly enough, does come up because sometimes you'll use something like your Earth Slicer or your Phantom Fortress or even your VFD, and it'll run out of materials, and then it's just sitting there doing nothing, and you don't have ways to link up. Sometimes you can optimally make something like an IP Masquerena without just completely screwing yourself over. So what you can do is you can make Gravity Controller, because it just needs one material that is not a link monster in the extra monster zone. And the other thing is, this card is pretty good because you can clear a card from your opponent's extra monster zone by balancing both this card and that card. Playing one copy of IP Masquerena for the reasons we mentioned earlier with World Legacy Awakens. To go alongside here, we have one Nightmare Phoenix, one Nightmare Unicorn for your possible interruptions. Next, we're playing Borlo Dragon, just about never comes up. Borosword Dragon, just about never comes up. And then one Ultimate Raptor Falcon and one Nat Beast. Now, this would be exterior if I had, however, I do not. And these two can basically also count as Waking the Dragon targets. But yeah, that just about wraps it up for the extra deck. For the side deck is situational. It does depend on your locals, on what is played at your locals, whether it's meta, whether it's rogue, who knows. But for my locals, I was scared of Spyro, so I decided to play Drone Lockbird. However, going forward, I don't know if I would play this card. I think there might be better options, just because this deck isn't really a deck that can capitalize off getting an extra turn. Yeah, you get to activate your field spell, get one form of interruption, but is that really enough? Because for the most part, you want a deck that has potential to OTK. This one, unless I change the build to be more VFD turbo heavy, I don't really know if Drone Lockbird is the most optimal card to side in this deck. Sphere Mode, however, 100% is optimal to side in this deck. Sphere Mode will clear your opponent's board, and you can also situationally just side one copy of Sphere Mode, which I tried doing. If you watch my Road to Glory video, I explained if your opponent just gets too much advantage with something like Autogeist, and they have Hextia, Silquetus Bounce, and they have Multifaker, or whatever else on the field, you could just clear their board with Sphere Mode, and then you don't really have to worry about their cards on the field, because their traps at that point will most likely be turned off. If they have Manifestation, you're likely losing that game anyways. But however, Sphere Mode is just amazing in general because it will clear your opponent's spiral boards, it will clear whatever other combo decks they're playing, and you don't have to worry about it being negated because it is a normal summon. We decided to try out one Mystic Mine just in case we needed to play some stall. I know people hate this card, I'm sorry, but I just needed to try it out. We also played two Waking the Dragon. As you saw earlier in our extra deck, we were playing Waking targets. With the popularity of Lightning Storm Rising, Waking the Dragon is also probably going to see a rise in popularity. Playing 3 Twin Twister because, well, F your back row, and yeah, that's about it. And we decided to play 3 copy of Solemn Judgment just because this deck does lose really hard to evenly match, and you do want to negate the evenly match. Whether I would main deck these or not, I'm actually really contemplating it. But yeah, this card I think is really important to play in some capacity, or just some sort of spell trap negation in your deck. And that just about wraps up the Generator deck profile. Remember guys, if you enjoyed the deck profile and you want to see more in the future of the same deck, or even other decks from me and my friends, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment in the description below. Maybe you have some suggestions for how I can make the deck better, or maybe there's some cards that I'm not playing that I should be playing. But yeah, let me know. Alright, peace guys.